right, Unit 3, Lesson 2, Introduction to Design Mode. So, we started today's lesson thinking about a common app that you use and sketching out or thinking about the user interface that's on the main screen. How does the user interact with that app? So, thinking about that, hopefully, you could determine that most apps are going to contain images, buttons, and text that helps users find and interact with information and content. So, last lesson, we took a look at a few different apps and talked about input and output. We also discussed the user interface, like what it looks like, what's there. Today, we're going to learn how to build the user interface in App Lab. So, fun stuff. So, you are going to go to Code Studio. The link is there on Google Classroom, and you're going to start with Bubble 2. And it looks similar to what it looks like on my screen. I'm going to go ahead and go here to code.org and show you what all you can play around with. So I encourage you to spend a lot of time on this particular bubble, just playing around with it. So all you're asked to do here is to look at the elements on the screen, try to move them around, look at what properties you can change, and is there anything you can't change. So if you go over here to your user interface in design mode, you can see that you can literally drag like everything around. And when you do, notice there's two pieces of information that show up, the X and Y coordinates of the location of that item and also its ID, the name of that um, thing, element. There we go. And if you click on a particular thing, let's click on a button here, you notice that properties show up over here and you can see all kinds of information that you can change about each element. The text that appears on that is the word red. It has an ID, that's its name. It has a width, a height, an X and Y position, a text color, a background color, font family, font size, text alignment. There are all kinds of things on there. And so play around with what's on each type of element and what all you can change about them. Do notice this at the bottom. A lot of people kind of miss this, but it says depth and there are a series of arrows. So, what that does is if you put one thing on top of another, it's going to determine which one is forward, which one's on top. So, you can put it backwards, and now the flower is on top of the word red. You can also change the screen. So at the top it shows this is the home screen, but if I click the drop down, I have other screens that are already set up that I can play around with. Once you're done with Bubble 2, you need to hit Run, and then you'll see the Finish button at the bottom. And you're going to move through a series of other bubbles that are each going to ask you to change the properties of elements in different ways. So the Bubble 3 says click on the screen element. So you have to kind of mouse over it to find which one is called screen and match the theme in the picture below. You can usually move this down just a little bit. So they're wanting you to make your app look like this app. So there's several things you're going to have to change on that. And then whenever you're finished, make sure you hit run and hit the finish button. Go ahead and also move through bubbles 4, 5, and 6 and 7. And then finally on bubble 8, they are giving you a blank screen and they're showing you what they want the screen to look like in the end. So you've got a blank slate and you put it all on there. Don't stress out too much if you can't get exactly the right color or exactly the right image or anything like that. Just do your best. And the whole purpose of this lesson is just to figure out what you can and can't do with design mode. Because in the next lesson, we're going to be starting to actually build an app in design mode. So finally, we want to talk about, there we go, what elements do collect input, and that could be buttons, text input, checkboxes, radio buttons, drop down, all those elements that you have access to in design mode. What elements display output? That could be images and text. And do you think there are any elements that can do both? So it's kind of a trick question. Most of the elements can do both because they can be clicked and they can change their content. So you'll see that in action in the next few lessons.